9 minutes before 8. How often is it that you read a story about a senior politician, your heart actually warms to him? Well, it's happened to me today in the Daily Telegraph, because I read of the man with whom I'm about to speak, Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary Dominic Raab, who told how he lost his dad aged 12. Now, I lost mine aged 20, and I thought that was young enough. Age 12 must be just absolutely heartbreaking for the lad. He says if a middle-class boy from Buckinghamshire benefited from it, this is taking up boxing, can you imagine what the formula will do for a working-class kid in Blackpool, or someone who comes from a working-class home in Newham? So a £300 million package is on the way. Mr. Raab joins me now. Good to have you on. I had no idea of the tragedy you endured as a young boy. What did boxing give you, or what did boxing or karate give you? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Well, look, I came from, as I say, a middle-class background. Dad died at 12. Obviously, a very difficult time. I was lucky because my mum was pretty heroic.
Had he been ill,
and
Mr. Raab? Did you have notice?
He died of cancer.
So did mine. How extraordinary. Yeah, on you go, sir. Right.
And so, look, the truth is I went up the hill to the grammar school, so I had a good education, but I went down the hill to the Slough Karate Club. And in fact, my karate instructor, Mick Daniels, is a big fan of LBC and yours in particular. He often messages me after we've been on. So,
if I were to take him on in a fight, Mr. Raab, what throw do you think I should go for?
I don't think that ends well for you.
No, I don't think it does either.
But he does also do sports rehabilitation, so he could probably help you out afterwards.
That's right, as I'm lying bruised and battered on the sidewalk. But go on to what it actually provided you with, Mr. Raab.
Well, look, the thing about sport, and it's not just boxing or karate, karate was particularly my sport from a young age. You're attracted into it for the sport, the role models, but actually you learn a lot of other things: respect, discipline, an approach to life. And if you can capture, and this is what our Youth Justice Turnaround Scheme, £300 million over 3 years, we're targeting 20,000 young people. If you can get those young people who are at risk, far greater risk than I was, of getting dragged into violence, antisocial behaviour, gangs, drugs, if you can capture their interest and give them a positive path, get the other services, the schools, potentially the police, the local council to work with them, not only do you give those young people a chance to stay clean and lead a much more fulfilling life for themselves, but boy does it have an impact on crime. You've got a great chance, because prevention is better than cure, of reducing crime, particularly in those hard up areas. I mean, I've worked for Fight for Peace, a charity in Newham. We were up in Blackpool earlier this week, so much tougher environments than I grew up in. And so this is really about keeping our streets safer, but along with hiring more police, tougher prison sentence, I do think for young people, making sure you've got those positive outlets will do a huge amount to make our communities safer.
I've helped raise funds for a boxing gym that's run by the businessman Gerald Ronson in East London. You might be aware of it. And what I notice is it gives these lads and girls, in some instances, I think it gives them discipline, and it actually gives them a family network that they've not benefited from in the past. And that's what I think it provides for them, Mr. Raab.
Yeah, I totally agree, and respect.
Yeah.
Respect for your opponents. I mean, I remember I talked a bit about it at the week. I remember going up to Liverpool on my own to do second dan, and I kicked on a mate's floor. I turned up on my own. There were a bunch of different clubs. I had a big ding-dong with a lad from Liverpool, and all the club were waiting for me on the outside. I was slightly nervous, and they said, well, since you gave one of our lads a good going over, at least you could do is come and have a pint with us in the pub. Now there is something in martial arts and boxing, a camaraderie and a respect that is very powerful, particularly, I think, for young boys, but I think it can work for young girls as well.
Sure.
And the kind of role models and examples that they set. So it's not the panacea, but I think for some of those harder to reach kids, it's an important part of our crime fighting strategy.
What level did you get to in karate?
So I was third dan, a couple of British Southern Region titles,
Wow.
and I spent a year on the British squad. So I was just a decent national fighter. I didn't really have much cut through into the international ranks. But what I found, and I see in sport across the board, and both my young boys do a lot of sport, is the impact it has on everything else they do, and particularly confidence at a young age. So again, it's not a panacea, but it is quite an important key that helps us unlock a sense of motivation and a plan for those young people who otherwise could be rudderless.
OK, and lastly on karate, what was your speciality, Mr. Raab? Was it a komanage, a tai otoshi, or what particular throw or hold was your best one?
Ashibarai, which was a sort of double leg sweep. because I was quite short for the heavyweight division, but that's the way I'd get my blows in early.
Let's go to other matters. Has the Prime Minister got away with it as regards Partygate, Deputy Prime Minister?
Look, I don't think anyone would say that after the recent months of the commentary, the accountability and the transparency. I think what I'd say is it's welcome that the police investigation has concluded. That's important for transparency. It's important for accountability. In terms of what happened at Number 10, the PM, of course, based on the interim Sue Gray report, has already apologised. He recognised things weren't right, and he overhauled the Number 10 arrangement. We, of course, await the final Sue Gray report. That will be published as soon as possible once we've received it, and the PM will go to the House of Commons. In the meantime, we're getting on with the job, dealing with the cost of living for all of your listeners. Obviously, we've still got the appalling Russian invasion in Ukraine, and we're talking about fighting crime in the way that I described to you earlier.
You've referenced the Sue Gray report. Should she be allowed to, as is being reported, her desire to name and shame the key players or ringleaders?
Well, that will ultimately be her call, as it has been for the Met. All I'd say is that we were very clear. If there are any politicians that have been fined, then we would have full transparency, as we've shown.
So she will be able to name who she wants to?
Well, I'm not familiar with the discussions that are ongoing, but this is ultimately her prerogative. I've seen some of the reporting in the media. I think we've been very clear. Politicians are people accountable to your listeners. If there's any fine, and we've already shown this, that must be made public. You
mentioned the government now needs to get on, to use your words, with dealing with the cost of living crisis. What are you actually doing with regard to that? We're not hearing of cuts of VAT. We're not hearing of other cuts. In fact, candidly, we're not hearing anything, Deputy Prime Minister. What are you doing?
So first of all, we recognise that we've got a global struggle with inflation, that the aftershocks of COVID, the war in Ukraine. The first thing we've done is made sure the fundamentals of this economy are in good shape. That's, I think, the big difference between us and Labour Party or whoever else. So unemployment 3.7%, lowest in 50 years.
Inflation high as 40 years ago. I have to reference that as well. Of course,
no, but I'm not ducking the problem. I recognise it, but the fundamentals are important. You've got to have a dynamic economy, Nick. Otherwise, not just will you not have the jobs, you won't have the tax revenue to provide the relief. In terms of that relief, for those who may be in work but are really struggling to make ends meet, there's a £20 billion package of support. We've already changed universal credit, national living wage, council tax relief, the 5p off fuel duty. In July, so the things coming up, there's going to be a £300 national insurance tax cut for 30 million workers. In October, there'll be £200 extra relief on energy bills. And, of course, we'll keep things under review. But there's an enormous package of support there. You only get that with, frankly, a government and the Conservatives who have got the economy in the fundamentals right, not just to create the jobs to see people through, but the tax revenue to provide that relief. And that's why the fundamentals are so important.
You say, but you appreciate my listeners if they go to the supermarkets or the stores or the petrol stations later today. I hear what you're saying, but they don't think the economy is under control because they're seeing prices in virtually every possible good or fuel soaring.
Well, what I'm pointing to is unemployment, a record low 50 years. I'm also saying if you look at the growth of the economy, last year fastest in the G7, this year second fastest. We get the forecasters see a bump over the following year, but then it comes back. So what I'm saying to you is, yes, we recognise that for all of those people you referenced going to the supermarkets, going to the petrol pumps, the next year is going to be tough. But there is all the support that we can responsibly provide in place. We'll keep it under review. But the worst thing would be to damage the economy, either through jobs or the investment coming in that doesn't just pay for those jobs, but also provides that tax revenue that we need. So getting the fundamentals of the economy is right, and that's what the government, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, have got a laser-like focus on right now.
Last couple of questions. I know this falls more under the watch of your colleague Priti Patel, but it is reported that they had to delay the first deportation flights to Rwanda because of legal challenges. How confident are you that anyone will ever actually be sent to Kigali, Mr. Raab?
I am confident. We've worked through these plans. Home Secretary, I've looked at them very carefully. The Attorney General has. But of course, we've got lots of people that will try and block them. The reason we're doing this is because we want to end the trade in misery that the criminal gangs prey on, with people being encouraged to take illegal routes into the UK, and make sure that there are legal routes for those fleeing persecution, but make sure also there's a distinction between those who come here lawfully and unlawfully. And I think that's right, amidst the suite of other measures that we're taking.
Will people leave this month, as the Prime Minister is hoping?
Look, as soon as we can do it, it will be done, and we'll work through all of those different challenges.
Deputy Prime Minister?
I hope it's done as soon as possible. The Home Secretary will be closer to the challenges and the operational issues than I am, but we want to get it done as soon as possible.
Just put your justice hat on, if you would. You won't be aware of this, but the LBC has an exclusive story coming up in a few moments' time. The Met Police plan to enforce 1 million speeding offences a year by 2024 through 25. Since 2017, violent crime in London is up 26%, sex crimes up more than 40%. Is this the right use of police resources to go after motorists, Justice Secretary?
Well, I think we've got to do both. I think road traffic offences are important. Lives are at risk. Things like speeding, I totally get that. In terms of as we come through the pandemic, building back stronger, look, I would also say, look, the conviction rate in the last quarter of 2021 arose from 68 to 71%, for example, for rapes. Rape convictions in the last year have gone up by 67%. There's a huge amount of work more to do. I'm working very closely with not just Priti Patel, but the Attorney General. There's a great initiative to combine police and prosecutors to strengthen and streamline the approach to rape and serious sexual violence. So we are focusing on the really serious stuff, but road traffic accidents and the lives lost on our roads is important too.
Lastly, when the new Chief Inspector of Constabulary, Andy Cook, implies police officers should use discretion when it comes to shoplifting, which I prefer to call thieving or robbery, do you concur?
Look, the reality is that the law needs to be enforced without fear or favour. And the one thing I worry just a little bit when I read comments like that, and I don't want to criticise anyone, but just you're asking me for my view, is for all of those people from very difficult backgrounds, particularly working class people up and down this country, who would never dream of pinching anything, however tough the situation got to. I feel a little bit for the vast majority of them who will find some of those comments jarring.
Well said. Thank you for your time, and my best wishes to your karate instructor. And when you next catch up with him, tell him I'll get a signed photo and a fight any time he likes. Dominic Raab, thank you very much. Deputy Prime Minister, Justice Secretary, appearing here on LBC. Not really the fight. 3 minutes after 8, let's get the news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.